the Non Sequitur Show. Continual watching beyond this point may result in terminal. Welcome to the Non Sequitur Show. Continual watching beyond this point may result in terminal face palming and a complete loss of wokeness. You have been warned.
All right, welcome everyone. A little bit different kind of show today. If you've noticed, I'm not using my typical streaming software, not using OBS and not using vMix. I'm using StreamYards, which is unusual for this channel, but there's a reason why. The reason why is I think it's going to be a little easier to present what I'm going to present for you today by doing so. So let me welcome everybody. I see my ever vigilant mod out there, Autistic Shill. Good day. Happy 4th of July, everyone, and happy to you. Don't think you celebrate down there where you're at, Shill. But for us Americans, today is the 4th of July, the founding of our country. And I probably should have done something more a little festive for this particular stream, but I kind of want to keep it on topic because what I'm going to be talking about, I think, of course, is pretty straightforward and easily digestible. However, I'm finding it to be not the case sometimes. So let me make sure you guys can hear me out there. Make sure that the clip that I'm going to be playing, you guys can hear. If my my mod out there can let me know, Shill, I appreciate it. And let's get started. So anyways, long story short, I watched a clip on a particular channel, Ricky Gervais, and somebody was asking him a question. I don't know the name of the person who was asking the question. My fault. I didn't check into that detail. But long story short, he was asked about, or he was going to be asked about what door to pick. And he was given 3 choices. And his response was what's called a fallacy of irrelevant thesis. And what I mean by that is that basically he answered something that was true, but irrelevant to the question that was going to be posed to him. And it's funny because all the comments on this particular clip, there's 649 comments, and the most ones that I've read all seem to agree with Ricky, which is mind-blowing because Ricky Gervais is absolutely wrong in here, and I can prove it using logic. I can prove it using epistemology. And the people that were responding on this particular comment section clearly didn't understand what was going on. So let me run it by you guys and see if it makes sense. Show says for $10 Canadian, I celebrate a triple citizen. My B-day is today. Happy birthday to you. Oh, a happy birthday. You're finally 21. You can drink alcohol legally. I am so happy for you. We're going to have beer together, Shill. Although I'm only drinking coffee right now. So happy birthday. She, you know, what kind of mod on her birthday sends a super chat? We should be sending her stuff for all she does, because Shill's an amazing mod for many, many different channels, and I appreciate everything she does. So thank you for that. All right, so let me make sure you guys can hear this. I'm going to play it straight through. It's a very short clip. It's a short. And so let me play it once, and then I will do critical analysis on it, right? So this is a fair use clip. It's from a channel called Atheist.archive. I've already tagged him. It's, you know, so it's fair use. It's a short, right? So it's only like a minute. And I will be discussing it. So let's see what actually is said here first. Ready? Okay, so make sure you can all hear it. Kano, hey, Kano, welcome. And here we go.
If there were 3 doors, which says God exists, God doesn't exist, I don't know.
That doesn't make sense.
There's 3 doors. It says God exists, but doesn't exist, I don't know.
But you not knowing is irrelevant to where there is or isn't a God. You've done a sleight of hand there on a category mistake, because one is knowledge and two are beliefs, right?
I haven't even finished my question.
No, what? No, there's always, I'm saying three is always there. If you had to choose one,
Yeah.
I believe there's a God. I don't believe there's a God. I don't know is irrelevant then, isn't it?
All right. Now, look at this guy's face here. This is the face of somebody is like thinking this guy is a complete idiot. Now, let me make it very clear. I think Ricky Gervais is a brilliant comedian. He is funnier than hell. The dude is legit hilarious. I have absolutely no criticism of his humor. I love the fact he can do stand-up. I love the fact that he can go to the award ceremonies, and he just does an absolutely amazing job. But as John Foley points out, Gervais is conflating Doxastic with ontological propositions. Absolutely correct. That is exactly what I'm going to be talking about, John. So I know I'm not the only one that's discovered this particular problem, because the people that know philosophy will probably hopefully agree with me here, but the people commenting clearly didn't understand what was going on. So thank you for becoming a new member, Purple Dragon, Autistic Show. Oh, Pheasant. Hi, Steve. What's new? I got married in April. So there's that thing. Oh, congratulations, Pheasant. For people who don't know, Pheasant met his wife on this particular channel, through this channel. So he's been a long, particularly, strong fan of the channel. Back when we used to get like 1,000 watching at a time. And so one of the good things that came out of this channel is that Pheasant met his fiance, Nadia, if I remember her correctly. Was it Nadia? Or Nadine? Nadine. It was Nadine. I'm sorry. And they got married. So I'm so happy for you guys. So give my best wishes to her. Let me rewind this a little bit, and let's go through this systematically now. So this gentleman, and again, I don't know his name, and I do apologize, is asking, and we're going to play a little game after this. So he's saying there's three doors. Now listen very carefully to the three doors. Ready?
Which says God exists, God doesn't exist, I don't know.
Okay.
That doesn't make sense.
Okay, so it absolutely does make sense. And let's look at this. So let's go to my Twitter page that I posted this on. And let me walk you through this, because there's three doors that he's asking. And I say, let me dumb down the question that was going to be asked of Ricky Gervais before he rudely interrupted the guy asking him. Because he rudely interrupted him. He didn't even wait for the question to be asked. Ash. Oh, really? Actually, Nadine and I broke up a while ago, but Kelly and I are having great. Oh, my God, do I feel embarrassed? Wow. I am so sorry, Pheasant. Do I have egg on my face? I did not know that. So you got married to somebody that wasn't through this channel. So I retract that particular claim because I correct my errors. I like the things to be factually correct, but I'm so happy for you. They got married. So, but you didn't tell me that. How was I supposed to know that, Pheasant? Man, do I feel embarrassed? I just want to end the stream and start over again now. Dang. Wow. I feel so bad. Just that kind of ruined my day there, Pheasant. I mean, it made me happy that you're married, but yeah, thanks. All right. Magnus says, please dumb it down. I don't know philosophy. And that's exactly what I'm going to do for you right here. So dumb down test for atheism. Let me dumb down the question. Hopefully you guys can see this. Let me dumb down the question that was going to be asked of Ricky Gervais before he rudely interrupted the guy asking him. You have three doors in front of you. Door one, God exists. Door two, God does not exist. Door three, I don't know. As John Foley correctly pointed out, door one and door two are ontological propositions. They are stating a question or proposition relating to the ontology, the existence of God, because there's only two ontological states. That's fancy philosophy speak for there's only two positions of existence. You exist or you do not exist. Something exists or something does not exist. That is called a direct or a strict dichotomy. A strict dichotomy is there's no other options. They're mutually exclusive and jointly exhaustive, that everything must be in one set or the other. So everything must either, it must be the case that God exists, or it must be the case that God does not exist. There's no middle ground there. Does everybody make sense? Because there's only two possible states, true and false. God exists is true. God does not exist would be the proposition God exists is false. But then there's door number three, which is asking an epistemic state. It is asking, what is your position on these particular doors? And if you don't have a position, I don't know, does not mean anything to do with epistemological knowledge or epistemic knowledge or JTB or JTB plus or causal theory knowledge. Nothing. What I don't know represents here is epistemic doubt. It's saying, I don't know how to answer the question. Now, again, I know this is very unusual for the non sequitur show, and bear with me here. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, Steve just uses the non sequitur show, but about his agnostic positions and stuff like that in philosophy. Yeah, well, it's my channel, and I can do that. But I think this is highly educational, and I think this is important enough to put on this particular channel because Ricky Gervais is a very popular person, and he is making very fundamental mistakes, and I can prove that he's wrong. So I decided to do this on this channel rather than my personal channel that I usually do this stuff on. And I've already explained, I don't know just means you don't know. It's supposed to be you don't know how to answer the question, but I couldn't edit it in an hour when I spotted the error. And as you don't believe that God exists and you don't believe that God does not exist. So what it's asking is, do you have the position that God exists? Do you think God exists? Then pick one. Do you think it's true that God exists? Does God does not exist? If you think that's true, pick number two. If you don't have a position either way, that if you don't think God exists and you don't think God does not exist, you pick door number three. What do we call that door in philosophy? Agnosticism. This is why Ricky Gervais, who listens to only apparently Matt Dillahunty's and Aaron Ra's of the world, and the atheist community of Austin and atheist organizations that promote this lack of belief atheism, he doesn't understand the philosophy. And even though he has a background in philosophy, he doesn't understand ontology from epistemological domains. How does this not make sense? If I asked, we'll play a quick game here, but how does that not make sense? And I said this maps to theism, atheism, and agnosticism. If you hold the position God exists, what else do you want to call that besides theism? If you hold the position God does not exist, what else do you want to call that besides atheism? And if you have no position either way, what do you want to call that? Agnostic. And this is where I argue that lack of belief atheism is dishonest, because they don't want just door number two. They want door number three as well, without proper justification, as they have no more claim to that door than do theists do. Neither get door number three, because door number three has no claim by theist any more than it does, or atheist any more than it does by theist. You don't get 2/3 of the epistemic pie. So which door do you pick? And I had a little, poll here. And I said, if you pick door three, now you know why I'm agnostic, but I'm not an atheist, but agnostic. If you're an agnostic, that does not imply you're an atheist. Get it now? And this is just simple proof. If you pick door number one here and you believe God exists, we're going to call that theism. If you pick door number two, God does not exist, that's referred to as atheism. Some people argue it's anti-theism. That's just making up stuff. Anti-theism is an axiological status. Anti-theism is the opposite of protheism, where protheism holds that religion or the belief in God is actually net beneficial to society, while anti-theism holds that religion or the belief in God itself is axiologically devaluating society. That's anti-theism in the literature. And you can go read Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy. There's a great article on that called the Axiology of Theism that explains anti-theism. It has nothing to do with belief states as far as the ontology of God. It has nothing to do with believing God does not exist. Anybody who says anti-theism is the position that you believe God does not exist, it does not know philosophy. You'll go to these blogs out there that will say that, but I've nowhere in the academic literature have I ever seen that term used to believe there's no God. Nowhere. If there is such a thing, it's minor. But in 99% of the literature I've ever read, it's always atheism as a belief that God doesn't exist. Now, the problem is that when the people like Ricky Gervais say, "Oh, well, you don't believe in God, you're an atheist by definition," which is called appealing to definition fallacy or argumentium ad dictionarium. But he wants 2/3 of the epistemic pie. He wants not just this door for the people that believe there's no God. He also wants this door for the people that don't have a position on it. The people that say, I just lack a belief. Because here's the fun fact using logic. If you do not hold a position, if you suspend judgment on the proposition where you do not have a position on the proposition God exists, that's called closed under negation, which means you also do not have a position on the negation. So if I say I lack a belief in God, it's ambiguous because I don't know if you lack a belief in God because you believe there's no God and you pick door number two, or you lack a belief in God and you have no position either way. See the problem? And the lack of belief atheist wants both these doors. They want this door as atheism and they want this door as atheism. They want to assume agnostic into theism without justification because a theist can do the same thing. A theist can just say, well, no, if you don't have a position either way, you're now a theist, because we're going to define theism as somebody who believes there's a God or lacks a belief that there isn't. They can do that. That's my infamous WASP argument, because if you don't allow a theist to do that, that is by definition special pleading. So Ricky Gervais wants 2/3 of that epistemic pie. Now let's play the game here. So let's play the 3-door game here. Okay, so you have 3 doors. Boga says, I have great getting it now. I love Ricky as a social commentator, but hate him as a comedian. That should say a lot about my philosophy skills. Really, he's hilarious as a comedian. Triple Count says, you're wrong, Steve. Atheism, theism, belief, agnosticism, agnosticism deals with knowledge. That's absolutely incorrect, Triple Crow, and I would highly recommend that you read the academic literature, but it's actually irrelevant because I'm proving to you now that it's irrelevant. It's completely irrelevant. So first of all, when you say I'm wrong, you need to demonstrate it. I've been doing this 10 years. I guarantee that what you just said is completely incorrect when it comes to Gnosticism and atheism, or excuse me, Gnosticism. Those are unrelated positions. Believe it or not, the term agnosticism was coined by Thomas Henry Huxley in the latter part of the 19th century. And he coined it to mean a person who was unjustified to believe in the position of God existing or not existing because it wasn't based upon scientific grounding. Agnosticism, when it first was coined, was a normative epistemic principle. It was absolutely unrelated to Gnosticism. He used the root nos and G-N-O-S, not Gnostic, as a misconception. If you go read Agnosticism, written in 1903 by Robert Flint, he makes it very clear, because he was a contemporary of Huxley, that Huxley didn't use the word Gnostic. He used the word nos, and he used it to represent the illusion of having knowledge. He used it to represent the modern Gnostics of his day that were making claims that he felt were unjustifiable. Not just knowledge claims, but belief claims. He thought theism and atheism were both untenable. As a matter of fact, believe it or not, he actually felt atheism was even more untenable, even though he was not a theist. He found that atheists making claims there's no God without justification was more disgusting to him, more vile and more reprehensible, probably because he was a non-theist and he was a scientifically minded person, and he recognized that atheists were making claims and they weren't justifying them. And that was what he felt was offensive by atheism, even though he was a non-believer. He was not an atheist. I mean, he wasn't an atheist as we would understand it, or you guys would understand it. But Gnosticism had nothing to do with agnosticism. Gnosticism was a 1st to 4th or 5th century philosophical movement. There, Triple Crow, and I know we're getting him off base, but it's fine. It's a non sequitur show. We're going to educate here. So Gnosticism dealt with a philosophy that there was a being named Sophia. And if you read Pistis Sophia or On the Origin of the World, it makes it very clear that, and there's many, many different variations of this, many, but the crux of it was that Sophia fell from grace when she fell from a heavens called Plemora. And when she fell, she instilled this esoteric hidden knowledge into people that the being that they were worshiping was called Yaldabaoth, and he was a trickster god. And he created the earth, but he didn't create the heavens. The heavens creation was created by a god called the unknown god. So if you see people talking about praying to the unknown god, that goes back to Gnosticism. And she fell from heaven because she wanted what's called emanations of her own. She was a lesser aeon in the mythos. And so that Gnostic belief was that knowledge was imparted to man, but it wasn't epistemic knowledge. It was esoteric or arcane knowledge of that hidden God. That's what it meant. That's what it referred to. It wasn't referring to like, I know that 1 + 1 = 2, or I know P is true. It wasn't referring to that kind of knowledge. I mean, you have to remember that words have different senses and meanings. So Triple Crow, when you say agnosticism and Gnosticism deal with knowledge, you're absolutely incorrect, because agnosticism is a belief position. Agnosticism has never been a knowledge position. It's never been, I know something to be the case, ever. Not even when Huxley coined it as a normative epistemic principle. There is an epistemological proposition of the knowability of gods, which I've talked about many times, but that's a belief position that you believe that's true. If I say God's unknowable and I say, do you believe that? And you say, yes, then that has been referred to as a soft agnostic. If I say gods are knowable and you say, no, that's false, then you're saying that gods are not knowable. That translates to what's typically called hard agnosticism, which is in the epistemological domain, not in the ontological domain. And as John Foley astutely pointed out, that's exactly what Ricky Gervais is doing. He's conflating domains, and then he has the audacity to tell the person who asked him that he had a category error. No, Ricky, I know Ricky Gervais is never going to watch this, but Ricky, you had the category error here. You really did. You really, really did. So So let's play the game here. Oh, hi, Tom. Howdy ho, folks. Tom says it's Latin, at least on the language basis. Gnosticism is the antithesis of Gnosticism. No, I would argue etymologically that doesn't follow. In fact, Wikipedia even says don't mix up the two. They're unrelated. But I understand philosophically these things are independent. But yeah, but again, you got to remember that when Huxley coined the term agnosticism, it was a neologism. It was a new coined word that he wanted to use because he went to a party and he felt out of place. He said he felt like a fox without a tail because he didn't have a word that really described his exact position, that he didn't hold a belief either way. He couldn't side with the theist arguing that God existed, and he couldn't side with the atheist arguing that God did not exist. And for anybody who out there just says, well, atheism is merely a lack of belief, you're missing the big picture here. You're not understanding what we're talking about. There are two propositions in play. For every proposition, there's the negation of the proposition. P or not P is always going to be a tautology. Always. P or not P is a tautology based on basic laws of logic called the law of excluded middle, the law of non-contradiction. It's not even really based upon the law of identity, but it is based upon especially the law of excluded middle and the law of contradiction, which is part of the principle of bivalence, that a proposition must be either true or false. So let's look at this. Believes P, believes not P, and believes neither P or not P. This works for any proposition. Now, there is a fourth door. There is a fourth door you can add to this, but that fourth door is an epistemic contradiction. Let me ask my audience out there, because you guys are smart. If I added a fourth door here, what would that door be? And by the way, what's funny is if you don't choose any door, you're agnostic on the question. You're not answering. You're suspended judgment on it. So agnostic really just means you don't have a position either way, unrelated to knowledge completely. But let's play this game here. And then while I wait for my audience to tell me, Tom says believes P and not P. Yes, that is absolutely correct, Tom. Believing P is true and believing not P is true is clearly an epistemic contradiction. If I say I believe God exists and I believe God does not exist, that is epistemically a contradiction. Is it a Doxastic contradiction? Not well. I mean, it can happen. You can actually hold conflicting beliefs. It's called cognitive dissonance. It's weird how that really works, but you can have conflicting beliefs. So it is Doxastically possible to believe God exists and believe God does not exist, but it's still clearly an epistemic contradiction. Yeah, I understood what you were saying, Tom. I've done this a while, so I'm not my first rodeo, but thank you. Awesome, Tom. You got it right. So see, Tom getting it right shows that he got it right. Which Huxley? Thomas Henry Huxley. Adolf Huxley is actually his great it was a great grandson, I believe. Adolf Huxley. I'm horrible with Adolf. How do you pronounce his name? Adolf Huxley. It was his great grandson. But no, I'm talking about Thomas Henry Huxley. I'm terrible with names. Adolf. I don't even know how to pronounce his name. It's been so long since I've heard it pronounced because I don't really read his literature. But that was his grandson. So, great grandson, one or the other. All right, so let's play a game here. So, Tom, you're the smartest one so far here. I just lost my entire audience. Let's play a game. I'm going to give you a proposition, and you're going to tell me what door you want to pick. P is the proposition that X equals X, or all of X equals X, which is the law of identity, right? The law of identity states for all of X equals X, which means that for any instantiation of X, you're going to have an equality, a tautology. If you instantiate X with apple, you get apple equals apple. If you instantiate X with theist, you get theist equals theist. Yeah, there is a strange brand of ditheism. Yeah, so ditheism is a state of where you have the ability to have conflicting beliefs or contradictions without the principle of explosions. It's part of paraconsistent logic. So the reason why you would have consistent logic, especially ditheism, where you do not have that principle of explosion, where if you have a contradiction you start with, you can prove anything. Because literally, if I start with X does not equal X, I can prove anything. Logically, it's valid. It's just not sound. But if I start with X does not equal X, I can prove that 1 + 1 = 5. Okay. So starting with a contradiction, you can prove anything that is valid because it's called the principle of explosion. But there is a form of logic called diletheism. I think it's pronounced diletheism, but You know me, I hate pronouncing words, but it is, like I said, a part of Paris consistent logic that allows you to have conflicting beliefs without principle of explosion. So anyways, Tom, it's sound, but basically useless. Well, it's not even sound. I mean, if you start with a contradiction, then the contradiction is obviously the premise is false, right? X is not equal to X is a false proposition, so it can't be a true proposition. It can't be sound, because soundness means that the argument is valid and the propositions are true. All right. So Tom, I say the proposition is 1 + 1. Excuse me, 1 = 1. No, I'm sorry, I'm way off here. I say that the proposition is for all of X, X = X. Which door do you pick? Do you believe that is true? Then you pick door 1. Do you believe it's false? You pick door 2, or you have no position either way. You're agnostic on it. You basically say, look, I don't know enough to even evaluate it. I don't have enough information. And know right there is called explicit knowledge, not epistemic knowledge. If I say I know how to play the guitar, that's tacit knowledge. There's different forms of knowledge, because it's tacit knowledge, because my knowledge of playing guitar, which is crap, I can play some power chords, as you know. I cannot just write that down and somebody would actually, be able to play the guitar. I mean, sure, they can learn it that way, but I can't take what's in my head and put it in their head. It's off limits to them. I have to write it down. There has to be some kind of communication. They can't reach into my mind and pull my ability to play guitar, crappy as it is, and play guitar. So it's called tacit knowledge. But explicit knowledge is something that can be written down. So when you read a book, that's explicit knowledge, if it's true. Okay? Because knowledge has to be true. But epistemic knowledge is the belief that something is true, it is true, and that you're justified to believe true, at least under the justified true belief theory of knowledge, or justified belief theory plus, which adds some kind of fourth conditions, like safety condition, or what's called sensitivity conditions, which deal with possible world theory. Those are the most common. Or I prefer causal theories of knowledge, but it's irrelevant. But what do you pick here? Terrence Howard would pick door number 2. You're probably right, April. Yeah, you're probably right. All right, so door number 1, yeah, you believe the proposition. Exactly. That makes sense, right? I believe that for all of X = X. So let's try it again. Okay, so you're 1 for 1, Tom. The proposition that, let me see here. The Riemann hypothesis is true. How do you pronounce it? Is it Aldous Huxley, I believe. So let's say the Riemann hypothesis is true or not. Do you believe it's true? Do you believe it's false? Or do you have no position either way? And we'll see what he answers. Now, I'm doing this for a specific reason why I picked the Riemann hypothesis. And for those who don't know, I'm going to just read it off a wiki page because I'll butcher it. I'll definitely butcher it. The Riemann hypothesis is a conjecture that the Riemann zeta function has its zeros only at the negative, even integers, and the complex numbers with the real 1/2 part. Real part 1/2. Many consider it to be the most important unsolved problem in pure mathematics. Now, I'm going to have a mathematician, one of my friends, on one of these days, and we might talk about the Riemann hypothesis. It's very complicated, I think, but most people aren't going to know what the Riemann hypothesis is about. A mathematician would. Okay, and Tom's not a mathematician, so let's what he answers. But he might know about it, right? Okay, sometimes he says you have to look it up. Okay, don't look it up though. Just take a stab. Let's say you're in a room. Let's make this even more strict. You're in a room that has no exits. You have 3 doors in front of you. You must exit by one of them, based upon your belief, your belief upon the proposition. And if it corresponds to your actual position, you get out. If you don't, you're gonna be eaten by a dragon or something. You're gonna be eaten by an elephant and pine tree hybrid, some monster that that was created by an elephant and a pine tree that mated and had offspring. And behind those other 2 doors, if you get it wrong, that it doesn't match your actual position, you're just going to eat you. Okay, so make it a little bit more fun here. Okay, John says not proven in mathematics, so I don't know. But why does that matter that it's not proven? I'll tell you my belief. I believe the Riemann hypothesis is true. Most mathematicians I know believe it's true, but it's not proven. But the reason they believe it is because the evidence seems to point in that direction, And they're trying to prove it true. Just because it's not proven in mathematics doesn't mean you don't have the justification to believe something's true or not. I believe it's true. Just because it's not proven doesn't matter. But you could surely answer you have no position on either way on it because you're not familiar with the topic. Right? Okay, so April has to pick door number 3. TomTom has to pick door number 3. That's perfectly fine. But if a mathematician came in, they would probably pick door number 1. Why? Because most mathematicians believe this door. They believe that the Riemann hypothesis is true. That's why they want it proven so bad. Right? Why would you want to prove something to be true if you don't believe it yourself, right? Okay, so let's try something else. Let's imagine that let's do the gumballs, because anybody who has ever read my article, Gumballs and God, Better Explained, they should be able to get this right. I have a jar of gumballs on my desk. They are ontologically whole. In other words, that each gumball is one unit. They're quantified. I have no idea how many gumballs are in there. It's a lot. They're uncountable, so to speak. I mean, they're countable physically, but there's so many that you couldn't do it. You can't get into the jar. And first of all, you don't even see the jar because you don't see my desk. But let's pretend I have gumballs on my desk. There's a lot of them in there. And I tell you, the number of gumballs is even. That's all I tell you. And I'm not saying that okay, people know that I tell the truth. So obviously there might be evidence that they'll believe me because I'm telling you that it is. But let's say that you don't know anything about me. And I just offer you the proposition that the number of gumballs is even. I'm not even declaring that they're even. I'm just saying that the proposition of P is that the number of gumballs is even. Do you believe that it's true? Do you believe that it's false, which means that you believe that they're odd, or do you have no position either way? Now, I will even tell you the only justifiable answer to this question is what door. No, I won't even tell you. I'll let you guys figure it out. There's only one justifiable answer to this door. If you have no information either way to a proposition, you can't count them. You don't know anything about it. You have no evidence either way. You're guessing. If there's 2 doors here that are guess, which means it's not justified. So there's only one door that is justifiable, and that is door number 3. That you do not believe they're even and you do not believe they're odd. That is what's called the agnostic position, Ricky Gervais. No position, obviously, which is agnostic. And I can prove that by going back to my door thing here, right? God exists, God does not exist, or you have no position either way, door number 3. Now, going back to the clip here, before I go back to the game, listen to this guy. He says very carefully,
There's 3 doors. It says God exists. It doesn't exist. I don't know.
God exists, God does not exist, or I don't know. Exactly, I have it in my Twitter thing. He's asking Ricky Gervais, what door would you pick? Do you hold the position that God exists? Do you hold the position that God does not exist? Or do you have no position either way, which is I don't know how to answer the question. This is where Ricky Gervais screws the pooch. Listen carefully.
You not knowing is irrelevant to where there is or isn't a God.
That is true. That is why it's called a fallacy of irrelevant thesis. My knowledge or my belief is irrelevant to the ontological status of God. But as John Foley astutely noted when he came here at the beginning of the video, Ricky Gervais is mixing ontology with epistemology. He's not asking him about the ontological dichotomy of God existing or God is not existing. He's asking him, what door do you pick? What position do you have on that? If God exists, you pick door number 1. If God does not exist, you pick door number 2. If you have no position either way, you pick door number 3, which is agnostic.
You've done a sleight of hand there on a category mistake.
No, Ricky did a sleight of hand with a category mistake. Massively so. And this is why whoever asked this question, I wish I knew his name, looked so inquisitively to him like, are you for real? Ricky, I'm sorry, you're a brilliant comedian, but you screwed the pooch on this one, my man. Big time. Because you're telling this guy that he has a category mistake when I clearly have proven there are 3 doors to his question. 3 doors. You believe God exists, you believe God does not exist, or you have no position either way. And if somebody says, well, I merely lack a belief, okay, if you merely lack a belief, you have these 2 doors you can choose from. You merely lack a belief because you believe God is false, or you merely lack a belief because you have no position either way. That is why if this door is theism and this door is atheism, this has to be agnostic because you have 3 separate positions. If you want to call this atheist, which some people would call strong atheist, you want to call this atheist, some people call that weak atheist, you have now 2 doors of the epistemic pie. That's dishonest because now you're saying anybody who believes a proposition or neither believes P or not P is that particular thing. So if I said, okay, odd or even, if the number of gumballs are even, do you believe they're even? Do you believe they're odd or no position either way? You're now saying anybody who believes they're odd has no position either way. We're going to call that the same thing. So whether you have a position or you believe they're odd, you're an oddist. Well, how am I an oddist if I had no position either way? Oh, because you lack a belief that it's even. See the problem now, guys? The lack of belief, the negation, is entailed by this or implied by this. If you believe there's no God, it implies you lack a belief that there is one. And if you believe there is a God, if you believe there isn't a God, you believe there is a God, you lack a belief there isn't. If you lack a belief there isn't a God, you lack a belief that there is. See the problem? The theist wants these 2 doors. Just like the oddist would say, I want this door if you believe it odd, and I want this door, it's called odd, if you have no position either way. See how dishonest that is? Even though there's no justification, because the evists can come in and say, wait a minute, you believe I can believe either way on the proposition of the gumballs. I'm going to call that even. If you can call that odd, I can call that even. So if this is theist and the answer is atheist, what prevents the theist from saying, well, I'm going to call this theism? And if you appeal to a dictionary, you're automatically screwing the pooch because that's an argumentium ad dictionarium. It has nothing to do with the logic. If a theist says, look, I'm going to define theism as somebody who doesn't believe there isn't a God, okay, well, I'm going to appeal to that definition. Again, those are just descriptions because a theist doesn't believe that God doesn't exist. An atheist doesn't believe in God. So what? Just because an atheist doesn't believe in God doesn't mean they're a theist. Just because you're a theist and you don't believe in God doesn't mean you're an atheist. This is not a strict dichotomy. Theism and atheism is not a strict dichotomy because there's a third position over here. I don't have a position either way. But wait, Steve, atheism is merely a lack of belief. Well, if it's merely a lack of belief, then you have 2 doors you can choose from, which is dishonest. See the problem here, guys? All right, so getting back to the clip.
Because 1 is knowledge and 2 are beliefs, right?
No. 1 is not about knowledge. I don't know is not about epistemic knowledge, Ricky Gervais. It's about epistemic doubt. It is saying, I do not know how to answer the question because I cannot assign a truth value to the proposition. It is true God exists or God does not exist. If God exists, then theism is true. If God does not exist, then atheism is true. Agnosticism cannot be true or false. It's not propositional. It's a psychological state of being agnostic. At least in the Doxastic domain. There is an epistemological proposition dealing with the knowability of gods, but that's irrelevant. In this particular case, I don't know is not about knowing. It is a belief position. It is, I believe I am not justified to answer door 1 nor door 2, Ricky Gervais.
I'm going to finish my question.
I love that. Did you hear what he just said there? And listen to the way he said.
I'm going to finish my question.
He says, I didn't even finish
because 1 is knowledge and 2 are beliefs, right?
I'm going to finish my question.
He said, I haven't even finished my question, right? Because he was going to ask Ricky, which door do you want to pick? But Ricky didn't want to wait for the question because he didn't want it to be put on the spot in order to be forced to pick a door, because those are the only 3 possibly rationally epistemic positions you can take. And if anybody says, well, that's a false trichotomy, no, it's not. Let me make it very clear about dichotomies and trichotomies. If I offer you 2 choices, but I acknowledge there are other metaphysical choices out there, but I'm limiting your choices in scope, that's not necessarily a false dilemma. If I say, hey, John Foley, I want you to come over and I'll make you dinner, but I need to know if you want chicken or fish, because that's all I have. I don't have any other proteins. I'm not saying there's not metaphysically possible I couldn't have beef. I'm just saying, look, that's the only 2 options I have right now. It's not a false dichotomy. So if I say, look, you either believe or you don't believe, that's a dichotomy. But believing false and believing true is not dichotomous. There's a middle ground there, which believes neither. So just because I give you 2 particular states doesn't mean there's a false dilemma there. Now, if I say the only two possibilities you could by necessity pick is chicken or fish, in the global sense, then that's a false dichotomy, because there's clearly other metaphysically possible things you could pick from. But this is why you limit in scope necessity. There's narrow scope and there's broad scope when you're dealing with logic. Narrow scope just means by necessity, by the argument itself, something has to be followed from the premises. Something is narrowly construed to be true. But there's also global necessity, which means it cannot be any other way logically. A or not A is a global necessity. It cannot be any other way. That's a strict dichotomy by global necessity. But chicken or fish is not a strict dichotomy by global necessity. It's just restricted because it's the only thing that I have to offer John for dinner. So let me get my audience real quick. Viticus says, I think you just butchered his whole point in the process, proved it trying to disprove it. I'll explain in the comment section when done. Geez, I think you're incorrect on that, clearly. But TomTom says, the non-sequitur show, Steve, are there people you claim who don't have to choose a door? Well, if you don't choose a door, then you have no position on it, which means you're agnostic, which means you just sit in the room. If remember, you're locked in a room and you have two, let's say you're locked in a room and I give you two doors, John. You want chicken, you want fish. And you say, well, I don't want to choose either. I'm just going to sit here and starve. Okay, you're agnostic on the position, even though I didn't give you a door for that. You know, you didn't take a position. You said, no, I'm just going to starve. See that? So nothing obligates you to choose a door. You can say, look, I'm not going to choose a door. Okay, then you're not choosing chicken or fish. So I have no idea what you want for dinner. You didn't tell me. If you lack a belief that in chicken, you lack a belief, or you lack wanting chicken, you lack wanting fish. Okay, great. You're agnostic on it. Doesn't tell me what you want. Saying you lack a belief doesn't tell me what your belief is. If I say I lack a belief in God, it doesn't tell me whether you believe God doesn't exist or you have no position either way. What about Gnostic theist? I'm not going to get into Gnostic theist or agnostic theist because I've already spent so much time on that particular topic. Maybe another time. But until somebody gives me a logical framework where agnostic theism or agnostic atheism makes sense in a logical schema that's internally consistent and coherent, I reject those uses of terms. And in the years I've been doing this, nobody has ever put it in a schema that works other than me by reductivism, that I used. And that schema works, but it's trivial. It's like a trivial case condition. But we're not going to get that right now. So what else we got here? All right, so let's go back to the video real quick.
No, what? No, there's always, I'm saying three is always there. If you had to choose one,
Yeah.
I believe there's a God. I don't believe there's a God. I don't know is irrelevant.
Okay, see how he changed it? Yes, it's true that I believe the God, or I believe that either I believe there's a God or I do not believe that God is a two-door dichotomy. But by the same thing as I believe there isn't a God and I don't believe there isn't a God is a true dichotomy. The agnostic has no position either way. They don't pick either doors for that. So sure, it is true that you believe or you don't believe, but that's for any proposition. Ricky Gervais, and we'll show you here.
Then, isn't it?
And look at this guy's face. He looks over Richard Dawkins, and they look at each other like, "Damn, Ricky, you're a dumbass." And I'm saying that with respect because he's a hell of a comedian. But what you just said, perhaps, is one of the dumbest things I've ever seen in my life, Ricky Gervais. When I watched this video, I was like, "Oh my God, am I the only one that understands the mistake that Ricky Gervais made?" Because in the comments section here, it's just I'm not going to go through these comments. I put the clip in the video description, but they're all like, "Oh my God, Ricky Gervais is right." Blah 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 blah. No, he's not. And I haven't even commented on here. Maybe I will. But the link is in the video description. But no, guys, every one of you guys here that's saying Ricky Gervais is right, I don't think knows jack crap about philosophy or logic, because as soon as they started this, John Foley came in and he recognized the problem instantly, and he knows philosophy. So I know it's not just me. But look at this. Look at that look that they're giving each other. He's just like, wow. And the audience is going, yay, like Pavlovian dogs, just, being trained for something. Good job, Ricky Gervais. You made Ricky Johnson's and the other guy look like an idiot. No, Ricky, you were wrong on this. Triple Crow, and I will go back to the doors in a second. Triple Crow says, Steve, I stepped away. If I don't believe there's a God, but will not say there's positively no God, what would you call me? Non-theist. That follows logically. Look at the law of negation. A or not A is always true. That's called a tautology. If I instantiate A with theism, what do you get? Theism or not theism? You cannot arbitrarily just say, I'm going to call non-theism atheism. Why? What's your justification for that? That's like saying, I'm going to arbitrarily call atheism or not atheism, and I'm going to just say, well, if you lack a belief, you're not an atheist, you're a theist. The problem with that is there are people that have no position either way. They lack a belief that God doesn't exist. That doesn't mean they believe there's no God, does it? So you have theist or not theist, atheist or not atheist. You cannot semantically just arbitrarily substitute things like that. If I say theist or not theist, and I say, you know what, I'm just going to call the set of everything that believes in God a theist, and everything that doesn't believe in God is a non-theist. Those are called a complementary set. So in the set of the universe, you have A and A prime. Any member of A is not in not prime or not in not A. If you have something in the complementary set of not A, then it cannot be an A. These are mutually exclusive, jointly exhaustive, a strict dichotomy. So everything in the universe is a theist or a not theist. So rocks are not a theist, right? They don't believe in God. That's cool. But I'm going to say, hey, look, I'm going to just arbitrarily give the name non-theist to atheism. I'm going to call it atheist. So now I have this weird dichotomy between theism and atheism. Now everything that was in that set, everything that is in that set of non-theism is now an atheist, including rocks. And somebody eventually says, well, wait a minute here. I'm just going to restrict scope to things that have intentional states, like people. The problem with that is you're already in the superset of non-theism. You're just calling that atheism. So you're in the superset of atheism, and you're just making a subset within that superset of atheism of people that hold the belief. But rocks are in that superset. They're still in that superset. They're still atheists. No matter if you start making subsets, they're still in that superset of atheism. So all rocks are still atheist. See the problem here? You get that? Even if you start making subsets, it's still in the superset of atheism because you don't lose your historical taxonomic level in set theory. Just like in phylogeny. R&R should understand that. You lose your historical taxonomy. It's called Meyer's law of phylogeny. We're still apes. We're still monkeys. Even though we're humans, we don't lose our historical taxonomical states, right? So if I want to make a subset of ape and I want to say, okay, I want, lesser and greater apes, what is it? Homoidea and Hybriditate or something. I hate pronouncing them. Go ask Guts Gibbons. But it's lesser and greater apes, right? So if I say all apes are divided into lesser or greater apes, and I say, well, humans are greater apes, okay, but they're still apes. So if I divide atheism into things that have intentional states and things that don't have intentional states, both of them are still atheists, including rocks. So if I said, hey, I'm going to say theist versus not theist, and I'm just going to call not theist by the semantic word dog, which is just a signifier. That word is just a signifier. Words don't have any intrinsic meaning. So I want dog to mean the set of things that don't believe in God. Not like the animal, but just dog. Just a semantic word. Okay, now that everything that isn't a theist is now a dog. Now, granted, I'm not claiming they're a four-legged furry creature, but I'm just saying that that's the word that's describing them because I defined it that way. You can do that. You can define words any way you want. Does it make much sense to do that? No, but that's exactly what the atheist is doing when they make a false, non-natural dichotomy between theism and atheism. They want 2/3 of the epistemic pie. Okay, so let's go back to the doors here. And let's try it with theism. Let's try it with atheism. Let's say that I say, let's go arguendo here for the sake of the argument. This is, by the way, you don't say for arguendo. I've made that mistake so many times. Arguendo means for the sake of the argument. So saying for arguendo is just superfluous. It's redundant. For the sake of the argument. A minor quibble, I know. But let's assume arguendo that the proposition is that there is no God. That I'm claiming there is no God. Triple Sense, just trying to understand, how do you define theism? Well, I define atheism as any academic would. Atheism is the belief, the theory, the claim that God does not exist, or the assertion that God does not exist. That's standard in literature. If you read the academic literature as standard, as per Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, Cambridge Dictionary of Philosophy, Oxford Dictionary of Atheism, all of them agree that in philosophy, the standard usage of atheism is the belief there is no God. And that's what I use. So when you're asking me, how do I define it? That's how I define it. And that's how pretty much every academic and every philosopher I know personally defines it. The only philosophers I know, well, I don't know personally them, but there's a few that don't, is like Stephen Bullivant. He wrote the introduction, and he's the editor of the Oxford Handbook of Encyclopedia, the Oxford Handbook of Atheism, and he's also a theist, by the way. But he argues lack theism from an etymological point of view for utility. It's a weird argument that he has. And Graham Oppy, who's one of the greatest philosophers of all time, who's an atheist, in chapter 4 of that book explains why he believes Bullivant is wrong for doing that. So that's how I use the term, right? But it's irrelevant how I use the term right now. It's irrelevant. It's just the absence of belief in God, surely. Well, no, it's not. And I'll prove to you why. If I say God does not exist, which door do you pick, Tom? God does not exist. So if you pick this door, you're saying you agree that there is no God. You pick this door, you're saying that you believe it's false, which means you believe there is a God. And here you have no position either way. Which door do you pick? I'm telling you, my claiming, right, arguendo, that there is no God. Do you believe that there is no God? Do you lack a belief there is no God, which means you can pick either one of these doors? And if you lack a belief that there is no God because you believe there is a God, then you're here. If you're an atheist, you pick door number 1. Correct. If you're an atheist in the philosophical sense, how I use it, and most academics use it as standard, you'd pick door number 1. You look, if you say that if you think there's no God, you're going to agree with that proposition. If you don't think there's no God, it's because you believe there is one, or you have no position either way. See the problem now, guys? Because there's 2 doors you can pick if you lack a belief there is no God. 2. Because you lack a belief in the proposition. You lack a belief that there isn't a God. So let me ask this to who thinks I'm wrong here. Triple Dog, how about you? Where's Triple Dog here? Triple Crow, I'm sorry. Triple Crow. I say there's no God. Do you believe that's true? That there is no God? Do you believe it's false? That you believe there is a God? Or do you have no position either way? Which door do you pick, Triple Crow? I bet about do much of that. I got copyright strike, huh? We're singing the Jeopardy theme. Yeah, if you believe that God doesn't exist, you pick door 1. So I'm asking, I know there's a delay, but I'm asking Triple Crow K, which door do you pick? Oh, anybody, go ahead. Go ahead, audience. Which door do you pick here? That I'm saying that there is no God. What door do you pick? And then we'll go from there. Tom's already answered that he believes that God doesn't exist. Okay. That's atheism, guys. So anybody who says atheism is not a belief, or that atheism is the proposition that God doesn't exist, you're absolutely wrong. Because he believes this proposition. If the proposition God doesn't exist and he believes that, that's atheism. That's literally proving that atheism here is a belief there's no God. Because if atheism is a belief there's no God, how is it different than a non-theist? I'm not getting the big difference, because a non-theist is both these positions here. Non-theism covers both these doors. Atheism only covers this door. Think about this. If I do not believe there's a God, it's because I believe God exists and I'm a theist, or I have no position either way and I'm agnostic on it. So atheism is a proper subset of non-theism. They're not equal sets. They cannot be mathematically. I've proven this numerous times, because it's trying to take 2/3 of the epistemic pie. People are going to think we're doing the Monty Hall problem here, and it's almost as complicated, I guess, but that's not the Monty Hall problem. It's that if you lack a belief there isn't a God, it's because you hold one of the other positions, that you're a theist or you lack a belief either way, which is agnostic. So this proves that atheism here, the belief there's no God, if you pick this door because you hold that position, it proves that it's a subset of non-theists, because both these doors are non-theist. This has to be a subset of these two by logical implication. John says, I pick your bedroom door, Steve. So sexy when you talk philosophy. It's funny because before I went on air, my roommate was talking. She does a little thing on TikTok. She's got a few thousand people on TikTok. And I was talking to her and people were overhearing my voice setting up for this, and they're like, damn, he sounds sexy. So not quite the word they use, but similar. All right, so you believe it's true. All right, there you go. All right, so you pick door number one. You hold the belief there's no God. Okay. I'm an agnostic. I don't hold that position. You hold, Triple Crow. I don't believe there's no God. I don't believe there is a God. I'm an agnostic. I hold this position. This door I go through. But the lack theist says, no, wait a minute here. Atheism is merely a lack of belief. So this makes you an atheist too. So now you've just assumed my position. You've wanted two doors. We wanted this door and this door. I should say, not these. Yeah, not these two doors. You want this door, which is atheism, and you want this door, which is agnostic. You don't get two slices of the pie here. If this is atheism and this is theism, this is a third position that you have no position either way. Agnosticism is the middle ground between atheism believes, theism believes that it's false. It's believes that God exists, believes that God does not exist, believes God does exist in this particular proposition where I'm saying proposition that God does not exist. Tom says, if you pick door one, you are banned from taking the other two doors. Yes. Right? Because you've already walked through it. If you don't pick door number one, you have two other doors. Correct. And so if you don't believe there isn't a God, you don't believe there isn't a God, it's because you either believe there is one, which makes you a theist, or you have no position either way. That's the agnostic position. This is why whoever says agnosticism is not a middle ground, you're incompetent. Because there's always that position where you have no position either way, which is agnosticism. It's not dealing with knowledge. It's a belief position. It is literally a second order position. It's called a second order belief position. It's the belief that you can not pick either other door and you're not justified to. It's a belief about a belief. So believes neither P nor not P, which if you read Stanford, if you read in an encyclopedia, if you read the literature, it all tells you that's agnostic. That's agnostic because you have no position either way. It has nothing to do with knowledge, guys. Nothing. It's epistemic doubt because you're not justified to hold the position true. You're not justified to believe the position is false. You have to take the third door. That's the third door when it comes to agnosticism. So the agnostic will pick this door. So when you go back to Ricky Gervais here, this guy here.
If there were three doors,
listen.
God exists, God doesn't exist, I don't know.
So going back to the three doors here, God exists, which would be this door, P equals God exists. God does not exist, which means the proposition is false. Or I don't know how to answer the question because you have no position either way. Same thing with the gumballs. Even, odd, you have no position either way. You don't get two slices of the epistemic pie, I keep telling you. If you don't pick this door because you're an evenist, it means you're either an oddist or you have no position either way. You don't get to assume this door into this door. You don't get to say, oh, I'm an evenist, and if you don't have a position either way, you're an evenist. That's what the atheist is doing. The atheist doesn't get to say, oh, you didn't pick this door? Well, if you pick this door, you're still an atheist because you lack a belief. Well, no, that's unjustifiable. You don't get two of these doors, atheist, just like a theist can't say, whoa, you lack a belief either way? You're a theist because you're just appealing to a sensu lato synchronic general dictionary for common parlance, which is literally the argumentum ad dictionarium fallacy. Because this doesn't care what you define atheism or theism as. These are logical epistemic possible states. See the problem here, guys? Triple says, last question. Maybe if somebody asks me if I believe in a God and I say no, what am I? I just answer that. You're a non-theist. You don't believe in God. You have theism or not theist. Theists believe in God. If you don't believe in God, you're not theist. If you're not theist, it means you have two other doors you can pick. So again, if the proposition of God exists here, right? We're going to go back to you here, Triple Crow. So Triple Crow. Now that the proposition P is God exists. Do you believe that's true? That God exists? Do you believe it's false? That God does not exist? Or do you have no position either way? You already answered before. You say you think there's no God. So you'd pick door number 2. But I'm not going to pick door number 2. I pick door number 3 because I have no position either way. So a lack of belief atheists, though, what are they going to pick? Well, they can only pick this door because they lack a belief that God exists. And then they say, well, I'm not making the claim that there isn't a God. I don't have that positive epistemic status. Okay, so you can't pick this door. That only leaves you one other choice. Rational choice. Believe neither, which is the agnostic position. You don't get to assume that in agnostic. You don't get to assume that in atheist. That's dishonest. And I'm not the only person who has pointed this out. Many philosophers have pointed this out. I'm just the only one that I know of that has literally proved it that it leads to semantic collapse in my paper. Oppie, definitely is well familiar with this. That's where I got my idea for my paper on Graham Oppie, Dr. Demi, Dr. Burgess Jackson. They're all aware of this. This is not complicated stuff, that really. But my paper is the only one that I know that proved it by showing that it led to semantic collapse. And then I had somebody on Reddit today tell me that I didn't know what semantic collapse meant. And I'm like, dude, seriously? I coined the term semantic collapse for my particular usage of my argument. I've only seen it before once or two other places and in passing, but it had nothing to do with my usage of the term. My term, semantic collapse, is a neologism of a sort. It is a new way to use that phrase that I've never seen before used. Maybe it has been, but I've never seen it used before. The only time it's been used before was with Harris 19. What do you write his paper? It was J.H. Harris. I think he wrote his paper in 2000. Oh my God, I don't remember when he wrote his paper. Okay, I'm sorry, but Harris wrote about a semantic collapse, but he was talking about more non-cognitivism versus cognitivism for the God belief, and he was arguing that if you have deliberations on the definition of God, or if God has meaning, or if God has any kind of value to society, or anything about even arguing if God has any kind of cognitive meaning, you're defeating your own argument because you're now a cognitivist. You're not a theological non-cognitivist any longer. A theological non-cognitivist holds that any proposition dealing with God is not truth apt. It has no meaning to it. But if you start deliberating that very thing that it has no meaning on it, you've imparted meaning. So he argues that non-cognitivism collapses into cognitivism. That's what he meant by semantic collapse. How many people know that? Probably not, because it's a very niche thing. Now, sure, philosophers do, but I mean, the layperson's not going to understand that. They're not going to read that kind of niche philosophy that I happen to be interested in. But I didn't coin the term semantic collapse from Harris's work, because my paper has nothing to do with theological non-cognitivism. My paper shows that if you start using words like atheism to mean in the weak case, then all these three doors become the same position. It doesn't matter which one you pick. If I say I lack a belief the other way, well, I don't believe P, so I can go through this door. I lack a belief not P, so I can go through this door. And I lack a belief either way, so I go through this door. This literally proves my semantic collapse argument, my paper, in a visual way, super dumbed down simply, that if you lack a belief either way, and you're going to call that atheism, theism, or agnosticism, because the atheist calls it atheist, they're going to call that, atheism. The theist can call it theism, which means you have a semantic collapse of terms because you can pick any door. Think about this. Tom, if you lack a belief there's a God, and you lack a belief there isn't a God, because they're claiming they have no positive epistemic status, well, if you have no positive epistemic status, you get to pick any door. So look at this. Proposition that the gumballs are even. Well, I can't give you an answer if they're even or odd based on anything. There's no information to be had. I'd just be making a guess. And it's not justified to make a guess. So I could say, look, I don't believe that they're even. I'm not going to, so I can choose this door. I mean, but if I say if you lack a belief they're even, then you're an evenist, then I can go through this door. If I say you can lack a belief that they're odd, you can go through this door. If I say you lack a belief either way, you can go through this door. So if I start defining things in lack of belief, the atheist says I can go through this door or this door. The theist says I can go through this door or this door. The evenist says I can go through this door or this door. The oddist says I can go through this door or this door. See, that's semantic collapse. That's the problem. Okay, so what else we got here? Makes sense to me? Awesome, that's what matters. That's all that matters. Tripico says, sorry, one more question. If I'm convinced the God of the Bible is a myth and I'm an atheist toward that God, that's restrictive, right? Because I'm dealing with non-classical theism here in a global sense, that any God, right? So when I mean God exists, I'm saying God, or gods. Because if you start talking about the Christian God or the God of the Bible, then this becomes ambiguous, because I'm talking about the global God, some being that exists that has intentional states that created everything, right? So I'm not being restrictive. Because if I said, do you believe God exists? You say, well, I believe Zeus. Well, that would be, okay, you believe a God exists, right? So I'm not talking about the Christian God. I'm just saying any God at all. So who, did anybody else answer the question? Like John Foley, like John, I'm going to put you on the spot here, Mr. Smarty Pants. P is a proposition God doesn't exist, does not exist. Do you believe that's true? Do you believe it's false? Have no position either way, John Foley. You can be a deist, yeah, Hindu, but yeah, no, it doesn't, no, because deism falls under theism, under non-classical theism, right? In classical theism is the position there's a personal God that interferes with people's lives, or what's called theological personalism, where you have a God that is the great demerge of the universe, and without him, the universe would cease to be because he's sustaining the universe. But in the non-classical schema, a deity is just a God that has no wants to even interact with us, or a deity that created the universe then walked away, an apathetic God. But in the schema that I'm using for my arguments, I'm talking about any supernatural being that has intentional states that created the universe, blah, blah, blah. That's going to be a God here. But it doesn't matter because it works for any proposition. If I say that again, the proposition is that the gumballs are even, you either believe they're even, you believe that they're not even, which means that you believe they're false because even odd is a strict dichotomy there, ontologically speaking, or you have no position either way. And that goes back to what I put on Twitter. You have 3 doors. This was the guy was asking Ricky Gervais. You have door number 1, God exists. You have door number 2, God does not exist. Door number 3, you have no position either way. And he's just saying, I don't know. That's what, and this is the problem. This is where Ricky jumped on that, said he heard the term no, and he didn't understand what was being asked of him. If the guy would have said, door 1 believes you hold the position there is a God. You hold door number 2 is the position you hold there isn't God, and 3 is you have no position either way. Which door do you pick, Ricky Gervais? The first door is going to be theism. The second door is going to be atheism. The third door is going to be what? Because you cannot use atheism because that's dishonest. You've already used it. You don't get 2 slices of the epistemic pie. Oh, the door number 3? Yeah, that's agnostic. That's what it means in the academic literature. That's what it meant for ever since the uses of a normative epistemic principle was out of favor. Agnosticism or agnostic has been even outside of philosophy. It means that if I say the mayor was agnostic on building the strip mall downtown, that connotes the sense that he has no position on it either way. He's not saying I don't know. He's saying, I don't know how to answer the question. I don't have a position either way. But Ricky Gervais heard that term no, and he said, wait, no, that doesn't matter. Your knowledge has no relevancy on the ontological status of God. It doesn't matter what you know or doesn't know. God exists or doesn't exist. There's only 2 doors. Yes, ontologically, there's 2 doors. God exists. God does not exist. But there's 3 choices. You can believe it's true that God exists. You can believe it's false. God does not exist. Or you can have no position either way. So let's go back to the doors real quick, guys. Let's say this door doesn't exist over here. I don't want to get rid of it because, well, I guess I could. I can delete it and bring it back. I can do that. So now you have 2 doors. Believe P or not P, Ricky Gervais. God exists or God does not exist. Your argument here, Ricky Gervais. Ontologically speaking, God exists. Don't forget the P down here. Just ontologically, God exists or God does not exist. Which door do you pick, Ricky? Now you're forcing somebody to take a position. You're forcing somebody to say it's true or false. That's dishonest. That is a false dilemma, epistemically speaking, because there are other positions you can take, like not believing either one. So if I say, hey, Ricky Gervais, I have a gumball on my desk, the proposition they're even, do you take the position they're even, or do you take the position they're odd? The proper answer is that's a false dilemma. Unless I'm saying, hey, look, I'm only giving you 2 choices. I acknowledge there's other choices, but I just force you to pick one. But what good is that? It's 50-50. You pick either one. It makes no difference. I would refuse to pick one. I'd say, no, I'm not picking either. You can't force me. I have no moral obligation to pick either door here. You're trying to force me to say they're even or they're odd. No, I'm not going to walk through either door. I'm going to sit there and starve to death. I'm not going to pick chicken or fish kind of thing. I'm not going to walk through either door. But ontologically, sure, there's 2 doors. But epistemically, there's 3. So ontologically, as John pointed out astutely, there's 2 doors. But epistemically, in the epistemological domain, there's 3. There's other doors too, as far as like indirect, right? You can say, look, I don't care either way, and make a 4th door. I'm apathetic to it. You can make a 4th door. But those are indirect things. Those are not dealing with the proposition itself. Those are emotional attitudes, so to speak. Right? I hate doors. I hate God. So which do you pick? Well, I have no idea. I'm gonna pick the 4th door that I hate P. I hate God exists. Okay, but what good is that going to do? Right? So there's an infinite amount of these attitudes you can have toward a door, but epistemically, there's only 3 positions when it comes to the actual proposition itself of epistemic nature. You can believe it's true, believe it false, or suspend judgment, which is called agnostic. Triple Code says, I guess my hang-up is that I'm leaving a very slight possibility that there may be a God. So what? So what? What is that relevant? If you're 98% convinced that there is no God, or something that God doesn't exist, then you're an atheist, right? Why would you suspend judgment at 98%? If I said, hey, look, I'm going to give you $100, and if on a probability of 98% or 0.98 probability, right? Probabilities and points. But I say there's a 98% chance you're going to win here, Triple Crow. If I spin a wheel and it has 100 numbers on it, and if you get 98 or lower, you win $100. If you get 99 or 100, you don't win. You're not going to tell me you're going to believe you're going to win? Of course you are. You'll be justified to. I'm like, yes, I'm going to win. I believe that. And you say, well, there's a small percentage that you could lose. So what? If I lose, I change my belief. I revise it. It's called belief revisionism. My belief was false. I had a false belief. So what? We all have false beliefs. But I didn't know that my belief was false. I mean, I didn't know that my belief was false at the time. I had the belief. That part is true, but my belief ended up being a false belief. The proposition was false. You didn't get the $100. See the point I'm trying to make there? Who cares that something can be false? You're not dealing with epistemic certainty. If I say there's a 99.999999999% chance you're going to win, not 99.9, I'm repeating because that's 1. Anybody says otherwise, you're wrong. But if I said you have 99.9999999% chance you're going to win, you'd be foolish not to believe you're going to win. Of course you're going to believe that. You hold the belief. But you say, but there's a really small 0.0000001% chance that you could lose. So what? That's not significant justification. If you use Chalmers wrote very defined axiomatic logical axioms. I just repeated myself. Axiomatic axioms. He wrote though when you could be justified to believe something's true, when you believe something's not to be true, and when you're justified to believe neither. He wrote kind of a formalized system of when he thought it was appropriate for these different categories. If you're 99.9999%, and he didn't use quantifications like that, but if you're 99.9999%, sure that you're going to win, yeah, of course you're going to believe that. Why would you not? Beliefs are not infallible. Neither is knowledge, but knowledge has to be true. But if I say I know that I'm going to win, okay, you might be justified. I think I'm justified at 99.9999% to claim knowledge. If I say 99.9999999999999999% chance I'm going to win when I spin that wheel, if I have a big enough wheel with all those numbers on it, yeah, I'm going to claim that I know I'm going to win. Why? Because I believe it's true. The proposition is true after it's spun and I won, and I'm justified to. But now you can say, what happens? You spin and you hit that 0.00001. Then I say, you know what? I retract my knowledge claim, my knowledge claim. I was wrong about saying that I know. I thought I knew. I was justified to. I think I took the correct epistemic disposition of claiming knowledge. I was justified to claim that. I believed it. So I met 2/3 of justified to belief. The problem was the proposition was false. Now I have to retract that claim to knowledge. I cannot say that the knowledge was false. But if it was merely a belief, I don't retract my belief. I still believed it. I just say that my belief was false. So beliefs can be false, knowledge can't be. But yes, you tell me that something is 99.99999% sure. Oh my God, yeah, I'm going to claim that as knowledge, because knowledge doesn't require certainty. You don't have to have 100% certainty to say I know something's true. At least not in what's called the weak acceptance case of knowledge. There's a couple different acceptance cases of knowledge. There's a strong acceptance case, which asserts that knowledge does require certainty, that knowledge is a subset of certainty. That's very few philosophers that do that. But most of them assert what's called the weak acceptance case, which means that if you believe that something is, if you have knowledge, that means, it means that you don't need certainty, but knowledge implies belief. That's the weak acceptance case. It means that you don't have to have certainty, but you do have to have the belief, because knowledge is a subset of belief there. So I don't have to be 100% sure of something to hold a belief. I don't have to be 100% sure to have knowledge. So who cares, Triple Crown, that you're at 2% chance, right? Come on, that's not a reason to withhold affirmation. I'm not going to say I'm not going to say I suspend judgment and I withhold affirmation merely because there's a 0.0000001 chance. That's silly. We couldn't have any beliefs then or any knowledge that's justified. That's a Pyrrhonian skeptic. That's somebody who says knowledge isn't possible. I'm not a Pyrrhonian skeptic. I'm not even an academic skeptic, for that matter. John says, I got to go, Steve. Election night here in my Oblighty. Needless to say, we agree about Gervais. I thank you. Thank you, John. I appreciate your input on that. Triple Cam says, okay, 99.99. No God. Okay, then you'd pick this door. If this is the proposition is God exists, you're gonna pick this door, right? You're gonna believe it's false. Oh, let me switch tabs. You're gonna believe it's this door, right? Because you believe the proposition is false. But what about the lack theist out there? What about the lack theist who says, I'm not making any positive epistemic state? I'm not saying there is no God. I just lack a belief. What door are they going to pick here? Who wants to play here? Triple Crow says, do you agree with the Doxastic? No, I actually wrote in my blog. If you go to www.greatdebatecommunity.com, I explain why Doc and Scale has errors or issues to it. It's not internally consistent. So no, I'm not a fan of it at all. And Real Signia says, right, non-theism does not equate to atheism. Absolutely correct. I'm sorry, all you lack theists out there, all you people that think that Matt Dillahunty is so brilliant and the atheist community of Austin is so brilliant that say, oh, theism and atheism are a direct dichotomy. You've been fooled. You've been fooled, because nowhere in the academic literature is like that. Because atheism has always been a subset of non-theism. It has to be, logically. You don't get 2/3 of the epistemic pie. You cannot justify saying non-theism is not theist is atheism. You can't justify that. But I need a lack theist. I need somebody who merely lacks a belief either way. Michael says, in computing one is a second state, a bit can be on, the other is 0, so 1 equals 2. Yeah, if you're, what's that guy? Howard, whatever his name is. The one that thinks that 1 times 1 equals 2. Thomas Howard. What an idiot. I need somebody who just merely lacks a belief, though. I need a lack theist. Is there any lack theist out there? Somebody who doesn't make a positive epistemic state? Any? A lot of them don't watch this particular program. Can somebody pretend to be? I don't mind if somebody plays devil's advocate. Can somebody volunteer to play devil's advocate so I can just pick somebody? You know what, Triple Crow, I volunteer you. Thanks for volunteering. Pretend you're a lack theist. Pretend that you have no position either way. You're one of those guys who says, I merely lack a belief, but I'm not claiming there isn't a God. So I give you 3 doors where the proposition is God doesn't exist. No, let me change that. I give you the proposition God does exist. Which door do you pick? God doesn't exist, but you have no position either way. You're not claiming there's no God. You just lack a belief. Well, you can't pick this door because that'd be theist. You can't pick this door because this has a positive epistemic status. It's saying God doesn't exist. So the only door left is this door. You lack a belief either way because it is closed under negation. So if you lack a belief in God and you're not claiming this door, you have to claim position either way, which is agnostic. I've proven this numerous times with logic. If you have no positive epistemic status, either way, this is what you have to pick to be justified. You don't get to pick this door as an atheist because you're claiming you don't believe there's no God. So you're taking my position. You're calling my position of agnostic atheism. That's dishonest because I don't want to be labeled the same thing as a guy who picks this. I want to be in my own position. This is exactly the problem that Thomas Henry Huxley ran into. He didn't want to be called an atheist. He didn't want to be called a theist. He wanted his own door. And he's like, wait, there's a space for this. Somebody who believes neither. I'm going to call that agnostic. See the logic? So I want somebody who lacks a belief to come in and say, which door do you pick here? Well, I'm not claiming there's no God, and I'm not claiming there's a God. Okay, you have to take this door. You're taking my position. You're an agnostic in philosophy. Well, no, I'm an atheist. No, you're just randomly calling that atheism because this door is called atheism. You don't get two doors named the same thing. You don't get to say theism, atheism, atheism. That's dishonest. Because logically, believes not P, or believes neither. You don't get to say even, odd, or neither and call that odd. You don't get to call it that because the oddest is the one that's claiming the gumballs are odd. Well, no, you lack a belief that they're even. I'm going to call that odd. But why? Why would I want the same name as an oddest who's somebody who believes they're odd? That's not my position. It's confusing. But you're an oddist. You lack a belief in even. But the oddest is somebody who believes the gumballs are odd. You see the problem, guys? You see the problem. The lack theist, like Ricky Gervais, wants two doors because, as John Foley said, he conflated and was confused by ontological domain and the epistemological domain. And that look says it all. That look is like, Ricky, you're just being dumb here. And he didn't even get to the ask the question yet at this point. This is the actual look when he after Ricky Gervais.
Then, isn't it?
You know, that look is just like, he's like, dude. So I don't know how much clearer to make it that Ricky Gervais, because again, we're just going to repeat this one more time. There's three doors.
God exists. God doesn't exist. I don't know.
And I don't means I don't have a position either way. The fact that God exists or does not exist as an ontological state has no relevancy. It's a fallacy or relevant thesis. He was asking Ricky, what door do you pick? Because Ricky's always saying, well, I'm not making the claim there's no God. So he can't pick door number one because he's not a theist. He can't pick door number two because he's not an atheist according to philosophy. If you read Schellenberg, Rowe, many other philosophers that we could say to be an atheist, you have to deny God exists. You can't just merely lack a belief. That's their argument. I happen to agree with him on that, but whatever. But he's asking him, which door are you going to go through, Ricky? Are you going to make the claim there's no God? Are you going to make the claim there is a God, or have no position either way? And Ricky's like, what? No, the third door doesn't matter because there's only two ontological states. Well, so what? He's not asking you that, Ricky. He's asking you what your position is on the proposition God exists and the proposition God does not exist. And you cannot walk through door number 3 as a lack theist and call that atheist because door number 2 already takes that spot. So anyways, I keep these down to 90 minutes. So I'm approaching the 90-minute mark, and I think I've made my point. Ricky Gervais, you're wrong on this. The people that commented, you're wrong on this. I might leave a comment on this video at some point today. If you guys want to leave a comment on it, by all means, it's a short. I've included it in the video description. Subscribe to that channel. Put a shout out to that channel, Atheist Archive. I don't know anything about them. I appreciate the use of the clip. It's fair use. But anybody who thinks that I'm wrong on this, I ask that you show me the logic. Don't show me a dictionary. Don't show me what you think is the case. Don't show me anything that you think is an academic citation because you read it wrong. Show me the logic. Show me the logic that non-theism must be atheism because you can never derive it from first principles. You have to just do this random substitution. And why do you justify to get 2 slices of the pie? Why do you get door 2 and door 3, lack theist? Merely because each one lacks a position, lacks a belief that's in God. That's dishonest. Triple Crow says, I'm not a huge Dillahunty fan, but I'd love for you to debate. Matt Dillahunty will never speak to me again because I will show him up, and he knows that. He won't. Let me make it very clear. Matt Dillahunty does not debate ontological things. Objective facts, right? What I mean by that, he doesn't debate claims that are objectively verifiable one way or another. Every debate I've ever seen him in, he's debating things like the existence of God, which is all based on subjectivity. There's no there might be, okay, so let me make this clear. There is an ontological fact in the matter to be had, that God exists or God does not exist. But since nobody knows one way or another, that's my position. I can't show you this ontological fact that God exists. If you're a theist, God would have to come down and then you can demonstrate it. I can't show you that God does not exist. These are subjective evaluations of the evidence and say, I've looked at the evidence and I'm concluding God exists. You're a theist. I looked at the evidence. I've concluded God does not exist. You're an atheist. I've looked at the evidence and I can't make a determination. You're agnostic. But there's no objective matter to be had provably. That's why no logical proof proves God exists or proves God does not exist. They might give justifications weak to substantiate a belief. That's fine. But they don't prove anything. They don't prove God one way or another. If they did, we wouldn't be talking about it for thousands of years. But certain things are provable. Right? And so if I do a mathematical proof, like I can prove that the square root of -2 is irrational. It's a very common proof. Right? I'm not going to do it, but I can prove that. If I remember how to do it, it's not that hard. I can prove that 0.99 repeating equals 1. There's an objective fact of the matter to be had there. So if Matt debated me on the irrationality of square root 2, I could just show him the mathematical proof and say, look, here's the mathematical proof. Where's the error? It's an objective fact that's there. It's a tautology. All proofs are tautologies. All equalities are tautologies for that matter. 1 + 1 = 2 is a tautology. So if I say I've proven 0.999 repeating equals 1, I can show you the proof for that. And it's objectively true. Any mathematician can go validate it. You don't need to know anything about me. I can go to a mathematician and say, here's a mathematical proof that the square root of 2 is irrational. And he can look at it and go, yeah, you're right. And every single one of them would, obviously, because it's long since proven. I can say, here, mathematician, here's my proof that 0.99 repeating equals 1. And if it's a correct proof, because I know how to prove it, he'll be like, yeah, this is correct. Now, you found a little error in the proof, then it's not proven, right? But if there's no errors, then it's true. The proof is a tautology. But he doesn't need to know anything about me to objectively verify that the proof is correct. You can't do that with God. You can't objectively evaluate whether God exists or not. Can he be justified to believe one way or another? Yes. Theism is justifiable. Atheism is justifiable. Agnosticism is justifiable. It's how you go about doing it. Because you can justify a belief. You can say, I feel like I'm justified to believe that God exists. Okay. Then somebody says, well, prove it. They have a category error, because claiming something is true and claiming that you can prove it are not the same thing. That's a category error. So does that make, so he will not debate me because I have objectively proven something to be the case. He won't debate that because he doesn't know enough about the topic to show that the logic's wrong. And nobody has shown that the logic's wrong. Nobody. They thought they have, but they don't, because they're just making very juvenile mistakes, very puerile mistakes. Triple Code says, Steve, you've probably said this many times, but what do you consider yourself? I'm an agnostic. I'm not a theist nor an atheist. And for anybody who says, oh, well, if you don't believe you're an atheist, you're dishonest intellectually, in my opinion. Because you clearly have never read anything on the literature about it, in my opinion. And if you have, you've cherry-picked it. Because I've just demonstrated you don't get 2/3 of the epistemic pie. That's going to be my tagline. People talk about tag. I know it's transcendental argument for God. But my tagline is going to be, lack theists don't get 2/3 of the epistemic pie. So go and run with that. I've already put that on Twitter, but I'll do it again. But Awesome Law says, what do you think of the tag argument? Yeah, I don't accept the transcendental argument for God, but I do accept transcendental arguments. Transcendental argument is actually a valid form of inference, believe it or not. And this is where the lack theists who only learn philosophy from watching Matt Dillahunty will lose their mind. Well, you must be a theist if you accept transcendental arguments. No, transcendental argument is actually a logically valid way to argue. And somebody's going to ask me, well, what the heck is it then? Okay, let me explain to you a transcendental argument that is actually valid. If X is a necessary precondition or precursor for Y, and Y is true, then X must be true. By transcendental argumentation. Now think about that. If X is a necessary precursor or precondition for Y, and Y is true, that means X has to be true because Y has met the necessary conditions. If it's met the necessary conditions, X must be true. That's a transcendental argument. So if I say, Steve knows that X equals X is true, then is a necessary precondition. Well, no, let me try that again. Let me try that. Let me think of a necessary precondition. If X is a necessary precondition of Y. Yeah. If I say I know something to be true, I know P is true, that means I've already believed it's true. And if X is it means that I believe it's true, then I have to believe something to know something, because knowledge is a subset of belief under JDP. So if it is true that I do know something, if it is true, then X must be true, that belief must be true. Because if knowledge is true, the belief must be true, because X is a necessary precondition of Y. X as a belief is a necessary thing that must be true in order to have knowledge. That's transcendental argumentation. Does it make sense? Awesome. You know what's funny? It's awesome. How many people have ever explained that before to you? Honestly, and I really mean that sincerely. How many people have taken the time to explain to you what actual a transcendental argument is? Now, I'm not going to get into the tag argument, because what they're trying to do is argue transcendental argumentation of God by necessary preconditions. I think it fails. Even if it is logically valid, there's issues with the premises. But we'll do that another time. But anybody who says transcendental argumentation is flawed, they're incompetent, because transcendental argumentation is basic logic. Thompson says that's why you can mathematically prove that's why you can mathematically prove an hypothesis in mathematics for natural numbers using complete induction, because n plus 1 follows n, as far as I know. Yes, that's called mathematical induction, Tom. Right? Mathematical induction, as you pointed out, complete induction. Mathematical induction is when you start with a hypothesis, and because n plus 1 follows, you can do a mathematical induction for a proof. And I haven't done a mathematical induction proof in years, so no one asked me to do it. But I have done it before, so I do know what a mathematical induction is. But yes, you can prove something by mathematical induction, because n plus 1 follows. Triple Crow says, Steve, do you have a percentage certainty about there being a God or not? Yeah, I probably am 60% confident that there is no God. I lean toward atheism. So I'm in the agnostic camp of probably between 40 and 60 area. That's the fence, sitting on the fence. So let's say you had a gradient from 0 to 100. Not using the docking scale. I'm just using a gradient. It's actually be negative 1 to 1, where 0 is in the middle. That's better. Negative 1, 1, 0. Assuming negative 1, 0 to 1, and that range. Okay, so I have the range of negative 1 to 1. And in the equidistant between both endpoints, I have 0. Right? So you guys have had math. Come on. Everybody knows that has math. If you do a range versus, domain. If I have the domain of negative 1 to 1, then equidistant between those 2 points is 0. So negative 1, let's say that's your highest level of certainty. You are certain there's no God. 100% certainty. We're going to call that negative 1. You have no position either way. We're going to call that 0. Or you're 100% certain there is a God. That's the highest you can get. We're going to call that 1. Everybody falls somewhere on that spectrum. Right? Everybody falls linearly. It's not orthogonal. It's linear. So I would say that I lean probably to about slightly to the left here. There's no negative 1. So maybe like point or negative I guess would be negative point I don't know, 2, negative 0.3 maybe. Right? I'm not full negative 1, but I'm more like negative 2. Well, no, I would say point negative 6. Yeah, negative 0.6, because I'm 60% out of 100. So I'd be negative 0.6 toward that negative 1. So it's not no, I'm sorry. It'd be negative 4. I'm sorry, my math is off. It would be negative 0.4, right? Because I'm only 40% towards theism and I'm 60% towards atheism. Does that make sense? Let me think here. My math is off here. How far? Because if I'm 0.5, negative 0.5, this means I'm halfway distance. No, yeah, it'd be negative 0.6. Yeah, I guess so. But anyways, irrelevant. But yeah, I lean toward atheism. So 60% seems high. Were you once a believer? Yeah, I was once a believer. I was Christian. No, I don't think so. I mean, look, 50-50, right? And as somebody who has been in no position either way on the gumballs is 50-50. I'm only 10% higher than that. How is that high? If somebody says, what's your position on the gumballs? And I'm like, well, I'm 50-50 on it. I have no position either way. I'm not an evenist. I'm not an oddist. I don't take a position. Do you lean toward one side? Yeah, I lean that they're even. Unjustifiably so, because I have no information. But I can say I lean toward even by an extra 10%. So I'm no longer 50-50. I'm 60-40. So why is 60 high? It shouldn't be. Yeah, you can remap it to 0 and 1. You can renormalize it. Might be even easier. Real thing is, you're probably a math guy, so yes, you can renormalize it to the 0 and 1, which is going to be a probabilistic thing based upon what was the guy's name? That oh my god, what's his name? Kolmogorov, right? It wasn't Kolmogorov, and I mispronounced his name, but Kolmogorov's theorems. He stated that for a probability distribution for an event space, it has to be between 0 and 1. That's your event space. So my probability, if 1 is going to be the absolute certainty that God exists, 0 is the absolute certainty that God does not exist, I'm 0.6. No, I'm sorry. Okay, let me rephrase this. If 1 is going to be the absolute certainty that God does not exist, and 0 is the absolute certainty that God does exist, I'm 0.6 towards 1. 60% there, that God doesn't exist. That makes sense, doesn't it, Real Signius? Oh, you said you meant low. Yeah, it's pretty low. Awesome says, that's Steve, God cannot be proven or disproven. I agree. So it ultimately comes down to what person puts their faith in. Irene. No, it's not necessarily faith though, right? Because there are faith-based commitments that we all have, but those are unjustifiable, at least Doxastically and inferentially, you cannot justify them. But it's not faith. If I say, I believe that the Riemann hypothesis is true, I'm not taking a faith-based position. I believe the Riemann hypothesis is true because when you look at the reasons for it, it does seem to indicate that it's going to be true. I don't have the mathematical skill set to get into the technicalities of the Riemann hypothesis, so I'm not going to get there. Most people believe it's true. Just like n equals n, n does not equal np, right? Polynomial time, right? Polynomial time doesn't equal non-polynomial, and there's a big thing on computer that wants to know the answer to that question. Is it true that n doesn't equal np? It's one of the most unsolved problems out there. It's a millennial problem. You win $1 million if you can solve this. Most people that know computers will tell me they believe that that is true, that p does not equal not p. Can they prove it? No, they want to. They believe it's true. They want to show people it's true. They believe it is true. They have reasons why they believe it's true, but they can't prove it. But that doesn't mean you're not justified to believe that it's true. You can have reasons, not just faith. Right? Does it make sense? I hope it does. And anyways, I saw this, but I didn't get a chance. Thank you. Oh no, maybe I already did, but thank you, Purple Show, for becoming a member and your super chat. I am going to come to the close here. Unless you have any other questions, because I want this to be easily digestible. And I think I made my argument. I mean, I don't know what else to tell you guys. I really don't. I just think that at this point, people are just being obstinate, and they just don't care about logic. They don't care about philosophy. They don't care about atheism. And since I lean toward atheism because I'm a non-believer, I want atheists to get it right. They're in my camp. Atheists are non-believers in God. That doesn't mean that they're a theist, right? But just like a theist, they're in the camp of non-atheist. They want other non-atheists to not make theists look stupid. And somebody who says, well, I merely do not believe there isn't a God, that doesn't make them a theist. But they're still in the camp of non-theist. I mean, they're still in the camp of theist. I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. They're still in the camp of not atheist. I'm sorry. They're still in the camp of non-atheist. So, yeah, I want atheists to do better because they're a non-theist. But when you say that agnostics are atheist, I'm sorry, but you've screwed the pooch. You're out to lunch. You don't know what the hell you're talking about. Straight up. It's just you don't. And Matt Dillahunty, Ricky Gervais, they have no idea what they're talking about atheism, and they never cite academic literature because of this. They never show the logic. How many times have you ever seen Matt Dillahunty show logic? He will not show my doors are wrong. He will not show my papers wrong because he can't. Because unlike lack theist, I go by logic, I go by evidence, I go by reason. So, anyways, Thank you, Shill. I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you guys for watching. If you guys got any questions, please leave them in the comment section. Like and share the video. Let me know what you think. I will respond to people that leave comments. But if you're just going to quote a dictionary, you're going to say I'm wrong, and you have no logic in your argument, I'm not even going to bother with it. I'm just going to say irrelevant. I do that on Reddit all the time. I just say irrelevant. But if you cannot understand that Ricky Gervais made a huge category error by conflating ontological statuses of God with epistemic dispositions toward a proposition, you might not want to be telling me that I'm wrong, okay? Because Ricky Gervais made a massive flub. That is why that one guy, and I wish I knew who it was sitting there with Richard Dawkins going, what the hell? This guy's just an idiot. And I wish I had more of the clip, because I wish they would have pulled it back and made him decide, because as I did with you guys. So I'll leave you guys with this. Whenever you have a lack theist out there who says, I merely lack a belief in God, play the door game with them. And they don't have to play. They're no obligation to play. But if they do that, then they're agnostic on playing the game. They're agnostic. They just don't want to play. And you don't have to play. Nobody has no moral obligation to play. But that just means that they're not really engaging with you intellectually. They're not engaging you with honestly. Because there are three epistemic dispositions. It's not just theism. It's not just atheism. It's atheism, theism, and neither. Okay, guys. So thank you very much. And we will catch you next time on the Non Sequitur Show. And good night.